It was a cold, dark October night in my small West Virginia town. I had just clocked out of work around 10:30. I had to walk home that night because at the time I didn't have a car, and my girlfriend was working the night shift at her job, so she couldn't give me a ride home that night. I had walked home from my job at the pizza place I worked, but never at night. I'm 19 years old and a guy, so I really don't think much of the trip. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little creeped out, because the second part of the walk was mainly through a very rural part of town. Houses were very far apart, and the road I had to walk on was just plain creepy, not to mention the town I lived in was a very popular place for hitchhikers. I knew everything would be just fine. I'd stop at the gas station to pick up a pack of cigarettes and head home. I noticed two fairly large guys as I was leaving the gas station standing by the dumpster, looking really sketchy. I didn't want any trouble, so I tried to act like I wasn't paying attention and just continued my walk home. Before I knew it, I was probably about just halfway home. For the most part, the walk was going fine, except for it being pitch dark out. Besides the occasional car passing, the only light I had was on my phone, which came in handy because I had a flashlight app. But my battery was only at 30%, so I thought it would be best just to limit the use of it. To this point, everything was good. But soon in the distance, I heard the faint sound of footsteps, which immediately got my heart racing. I turned behind me to see what was back there. There was nothing, just some tall grass swaying in the light wind beside the road I was walking on. I just brushed it off as a possible deer. After all, I did live in deer country. I continued walking, but picked up my pace a little because I was still on edge. After walking about another quarter mile, I heard it again. Once again, it was the faint sound of footsteps behind me. This time I was for sure it couldn't be a deer. Once again, I turned to look and there was nothing. At this point, I had a really bad feeling in my stomach and just wanted to get home. I still had about a mile and a half to go. I had no intentions to find out what was causing the footsteps behind me, so I took off running at a steady pace. After running for a steady 5 minutes, I slowed back down to a walking pace to catch my breath. I'm a pretty fit guy, so in those few minutes of running, I made it where I was almost home. I thought for sure whatever was behind me 5 minutes ago was long gone. I thought it would be okay to walk the rest of the way home, but sure enough, just a few minutes later, I heard the footsteps. Except this time, they sounded much closer. I turned behind me and was struck with pure fear. It was a large man dressed in black. It was hard to make out what he looked like, but I was almost sure it was one of those sketchy guys I saw outside the gas station by the dumpster. My gut told me to run as fast as possible home. I was so close. I was sure I could outrun him, but my ego came over me, and I stood there, with him walking closer, and yelled, "Dude, do you have a problem?" But I also added a few cuss words in, but I won't mention them. The second I got done speaking my mind, he began to charge at me. I took off sprinting and almost immediately was tackled to the ground by someone else. I soon realized it was the other guy I saw by the dumpster. At this point, I knew I was as good as dead if I didn't escape. I threw some punches, but it didn't seem to faze the guy because he was almost double my size. At this point, I was in survival mode. I managed to kick him in the groin, then gouged each of his eyes with my thumbs. He let go of me, and I wasted no time. Luckily, I got up before the other guy made it over to us. I took off running faster than I ever had in my life. No way was I looking back. I could finally see my house in the distance. I kept running as fast as I could until I reached my front porch. I then realized I forgot my parents were out of town that night, so I was home alone. I unlocked the door, bolted inside, and locked the door behind me. I had no idea if those guys saw where I ran to. For all I know, they could be running up to my house right now. I moved the couch so it was blocking the front door, grabbed a baseball bat from my closet, and then called the police. The operator made me stay on the line till the cops got there. While I was on the phone with her, I could hear some noises from outside of my house. I was almost sure it was those two men. They were talking to each other, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. The operator said the cops were about 3 minutes away. That 3 minutes felt like forever, but when I finally saw the flashing lights pull into my driveway, I was relieved. Once they knocked on my door, I moved the couch to let them in. I explained what happened. They searched all around my property, but found nothing. They drove up and down the road a few times and saw nobody. They still have found the guys that attacked me that night, and what still creeps me out to this day, the two guys are still out there, and they both know where I live. Since then, I purchased a shotgun and keep it in my bedroom closet. Needless to say, I've never walked home from work since. Last year, a guy came to my house door around 9 at night. He knocked on the door and I got my mom. She went out to see what was up. By the way, we live in a very rural area, so visits late at night are extremely uncommon and strange. The guy talked to my mom about how he was opening a business, asked whether she liked American-made products, then handed her a Clorox container as a sample. He went back to his minivan and opened it up to get a vacuum cleaner. When my mom saw 5 other guys sitting inside, she told me to run and get my phone, since we don't have a landline, but I couldn't find it, so I got a knife and stood around the corner. She threw the container outside and told them to get the hell off of her property, as well as that she was calling the cops. They peeled out of the driveway and we never saw the car again. 2 months later, my mom found a single bearded guy putting filled garbage bags by the back door. She asked him what the hell he was doing. He responded, "This is for your little girl," referring to my little sister. Once again, she told him to get the hell out. Then she went through the bags. They were filled with garbage, dirty clothes, and empty tampon containers. I was 7 years old at the time, in my parents' apartment and heading towards the kitchen. There is a small hallway corridor that starts with the front door. After 5 feet, there's another door to the kitchen on the right, and the door to the living room on the left. And 2 feet further away from the corridor turns into the right and continues to the bedrooms from where I was approaching. So I go towards the kitchen where my mom is talking on the phone, cooking with the oven and the oven fan on. And at the end of the corridor in front of me, I see the front door opening and halting because the door chain is stopping it. I thought it was my dad. It was about 11 in the morning, so I think my dad will close the door and ring the doorbell for my mom to open it up. It was weird because I hadn't heard the key turning, except that nobody rings the doorbell. An enormously hairy hand that definitely doesn't belong to my father tries to pull the chain. Immediately I understand it's a burglar. I rush to slam shut the front door with my entire body. I yelled, "No!" And I would have managed it if the burglar didn't put his foot as an extra door stopper. So there's me, slamming against the door with all my 7-year-old strength, panicked out of my mind, putting all my weight against the door with a huge burglar on the other side trying to keep the door open so he can pull the chain off. Fingers trying to grasp the end of the chain, and my mother completely oblivious to the situation, standing about 12 feet away in the next room. I try to scream at my mother. I remember yelling muffled pieces of "Mom, Mom," but she thinks I'm horsing around and pays no attention. It's after my 7th or 8th scream, when I was about to give up hope, when I heard my mom tell the person on the other end of the line she'll call her back because I've done something and she needs to check on me. The burglar heard her and let me close the door. My mom arrives and demands to know what I'm doing. I'm crying at this point, not being able to utter a coherent sentence, trying to point at the door, saying only "burglar, out," or something to that effect. My mother, not getting the hint, comes over and tries to open the door. As soon as I realized what she was about to do, I tried pushing her away, crying, sobbing at her, "Don't open the door, there's a burglar outside." So she looks through in a hurry, starts saying, "See, there's no but." She stops, and I see her very annoyed face turn pale as a sheet. All of a sudden, she grabs me and pushes me away from the door, tells me to go get her phone. I rushed to the kitchen, and I heard her yell through the door, "I can see you crouching. You're behind the door. I'm not going to open it, and I'm calling the police right this minute." The bastard was still behind the door, crouching as low as he could, not making a sound so my mom would think nobody was outside, and she'd open the door and he would rush inside. My mom called the police, and after 5 minutes of my mom issuing threats through the door, We heard somebody creeping away from the hallway and down to the building entrance and outside the building door. My mom was white as a sheet, not making a sound or expressing any emotion throughout the whole ordeal. It was as if she was scared stiff. About a half hour later, my father arrived, oblivious to the whole thing. When my mom told him what happened, he went and got a new lock and a better door chain. The police arrived that afternoon, a full 5 hours later, even though the police station is a 10-minute drive from our house. I don't think the burglar was ever caught.